Man, oh man, oh man. We have a new number one team at the top of the Big 12 football power rankings for week 7. I'm Pete Mundo. We are Heartland College Sports. We appreciate you joining us. If you are not familiar with us, now there are many of you consuming this show for the first time, as is happening each and every episode and each and every week. We cover the Big 12 Conference. We have been around for almost 10 years, but YouTube and the podcast and the radio show have exploded for us as of late. So thank you. If you are new, subscribe. We appreciate you being here. And it is so exciting to be able to talk Big 12 football with you. Those of us at Heartland College Sports are living the dream, and it's because of you. All right, let's get to the Big 12 football power rankings for week 7 in the conference. And there is a brand new number one. And that brand new number one team for a 7th straight week is the Iowa State Cyclones. Iowa State is number one in the hearts of everybody in Ames, and they are number one in the power rankings this week because guess what? They continue to not just prove me wrong, it's not about me, but I'm continuing to watch a team that is getting better every week under Matt Campbell and is continuing to find its footing in a way that I didn't necessarily think it was going to do. Every week I look at the game and I say, I don't know if I buy the Cyclones this week. I don't know. And then this past week, they're down 14-3, and they absolutely blast Baylor the rest of the way, 40-7. I know that they don't have a great Big 12 win. They've only played Houston and Baylor. But the road win at Iowa is an impressive win, as we've talked about for the last several weeks. And here's the thing. I put them in the one spot up from number 5 because I had BYU at number 1 last week. And Iowa State's win against Baylor was much more impressive than BYU's win was against Baylor. So I'm factoring that into the equation here as well. And BYU, of course, had a bye week. And I'm saying with a common opponent here, and a really good road win for Iowa State at Iowa. BYU's best win is at home against K-State. I'm going to give Iowa State the edge here in our Week 7 Big 12 football power ranking. So there you go, Cyclones fans. There's this massive misperception I'm an Iowa State hater. In fact, it was just a few years ago, if you're a longtime reader, listener, viewer of this show, then you'll know I was called an Iowa State homer a couple of years back. So it's never the case either way. It's just calling it like I see it. Iowa State's number 1 this week in the power rankings in the Big 12. Hit that thumbs up, by the way, below the video. If you have not yet, make sure you are subscribed as well, if that's how you're consuming this show and this content. At number 2 in the power rankings, I've got BYU. Moving down one slot, more so because of what Iowa State did this past Saturday. Cougars are 5-0, back at it this weekend against Arizona. At number 3, moving up in the Big 12 power rankings, Texas Tech. That's right. They're moving up. The Red Raiders go on the road and beat an Arizona team that had just come home from waxing Utah on the road. So I didn't know what to expect out of this Arizona team. One of my picks this past week was Texas Tech plus 6.5 because I thought there'd be a bit of a hangover for Arizona. It turned out there was. And while it wasn't the prettiest of games for the Red Raiders, I will say sometimes winning ugly is good for a team. You have to win ugly to win big. And if this is an example of that for Texas Tech, that is a great sign for Joey McGuire and this team as they get set for the back half of the season. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, gosh, I didn't get great performances out of Baron Morton and Taj Brooks. And I won a tough Big 12 game on the road. And the defense keeps climbing for the Red Raiders. So I've got them at number 3 this week in the power rankings. At number 4 in the power rankings this week, I have got the Kansas State Wildcats. Also off a bye this past weekend. They moved down a couple of spots. Frankly, their win over Oklahoma State just looks less impressive, to be totally honest. And also because what the teams in front of them have done thus far. So now you get set for an old Big 12 North matchup this weekend at Colorado, and that is going to be a lot of fun. At number 5, speaking of Colorado, I've got the Buffaloes down a couple of spots this week in the power rankings. They were on a bye week as well, so this is really more about what the teams in front of them have done. The Baylor win for Colorado looks less impressive, and even some of the shine is worn off of that UCF victory after UCF continues to struggle mightily this past week at UF. So partially because of what the teams in front of them did for Colorado, but also because of how their wins look after another week of data points. At number 6 in the power rankings, Arizona comes in. Same spot as last week. They follow up that huge Utah win with a total dud against Texas Tech. Arizona's made mistakes, especially on offense. That unit is trying to find its footing after having huge expectations coming into the season and just really not coming close to meeting them thus far. They have not had a great offensive output since, week 1 in that New Mexico State game. So this is, to me, one of the hardest teams to figure out in college football thus far, the Arizona Wildcats. I'm keeping them at number 6 for the week. At number 7, the Utah Utes, I'll leave them right there where they were last week after spending the weekend enjoying a bye. That win over Oklahoma State looks worse. Arizona didn't do them any favors by going out and losing to Texas Tech, but the Utes are back on the road this week. They'll take on Arizona State in an old Pac-12 battle. At number 8 in the power rankings, moving up, West Virginia. Went to Stillwater, smashed Oklahoma State, 389 rushing yards to 36. This feels like more of an indictment against Oklahoma State than it does anything else, but give credit where it's due. When you rack almost 400 rushing yards up, I'll give you props. I'll do it. And West Virginia, frankly, deserves it for that kind of a performance, even if it's against an Oklahoma State team that absolutely stinks right now. Because, man, they do. Can Mike Gundy figure it out? We'll see. We'll talk about them when we go towards the bottom of our Big 12 power rankings this week. But the Mountaineers are 2-0 in league play. They've beaten Kansas. They've beaten Oklahoma State. Not exactly world beaters in this league this year. But this weekend against Iowa State, now we're talking. Number 9, when you look at the power rankings in the Big 12 at Heartland College Sports, I'm Pete Mundo. Thanks for being here. Arizona State got a solid win over Kansas at home this weekend. Took a late drive to win the game. Sam Leavitt continues to improve his ability at the quarterback position, putting together a very effective 2-minute drill on Saturday night to win that game. KU struggled mightily, but Arizona State deserves to move up one slot from number 10 last week. At number 10, a team that is trending in the wrong direction, UCF. They tumble after another ugly loss. This one to a UF program they were hoping to overtake in the hierarchy of Florida football programs. And that's not going to happen. UCF has trailed by at least 21 points in every single one of its last 3 games. UF, Colorado, TCU. Of course, they came back to beat TCU, so good on them for that. They deserve some credit for that. But the fact that they've trailed their last 3 games against legitimate competition by 3 touchdowns at one point in each of those games is a horrible indictment on this coaching staff based on the talent that's there. But right now, if you're going to play UCF, you say, you know what? KJ Jefferson, beat us through the air. Prove to us that you can beat us through the air, and then maybe we'll give you some more respect in the passing game, and that might open up some running lanes for you. But in the meantime, guess what? I am not going to do anything outside of stack the box against UCF and see if they can beat me through the air. Why wouldn't you do that right now? So it is not looking good for the Knights at this point. They are 10 down from 8 in the power rankings. At number 11, Cincinnati. Bearcats had a bye, but man, if you're a Cincinnati fan, you have got to feel like you are a couple of plays away from being 5-0. And this season feels a lot different than it does right now at 3-2 and 1-1 in Big 12 play. They have lost their 2 games to Pittsburgh and Texas Tech by a combined 4 points. So here's what's fascinating. They play UCF this weekend. That game is on the road, or at least scheduled to be. And it is going to be very telling for both of these teams and what the direction is on the back half of the season for both of these teams based on how Saturday plays out between UCF and Cincinnati. At number 12 in the power rankings, we've got the Houston Cougars. And hey, we knew Houston had a defense. The question was, could they get a little offense going there for the Cougars? And I'll tell you what, they at least got something with Zion Chris. They benched Donovan Smith. They put Chris in at quarterback. And suddenly this team is much more interesting than it was a week ago after they got shut out in 2 straight games for the first time in 29 years. So they got a bye week. That's good for Houston. That gives Chris more time as QB1 going into the Kansas game in 2 weeks. And who knows? Maybe Houston's a team that can come out and surprise you as the season progresses. At number 13, the Oklahoma State Cowboys, down from number 9. They could be lower, but remember, somehow this team beat Arkansas in week 2. How? At this point, I don't know. I really don't. But they have that win on their resume. That's why they're higher than the teams below them. I don't think they're playing better than the teams below them right now. I think they're playing as poorly as anybody in the Big 12, but they have that Arkansas win on the resume, which is worth something. So I've got them at 13. They are 0-3 in Big 12 play for the first time in 19 seasons. That's obviously going back a ways. And, I mean, how many players weren't even alive on the team the last time Oklahoma State was 0-3 in Big 12 play? Good grief. There's little reason to believe that things are improving in the short term. But the worst part for Oklahoma State right now is that this is basically the same team that reached the Big 12 title game a year ago. I know sometimes teams stay together too long, and that has a negative impact on guys. But, geez, this is beyond just like guys not hustling as much. There's something deeper going on here when you get outrushed by West Virginia 389-36. At number 14 in the power rankings, the Baylor Bears, down 1 slot from 13 last week. They blew their game versus Colorado. They had to come back and make it competitive against BYU. Now a 14-3 lead against Iowa State over the weekend, and then they got outscored 40-7. That's brutal, and Dave Aranda's future in Waco becomes less certain by the day. There is no other way to put it right now. Dave Aranda should be squarely on the hot seat. I know they've had moments where they're looking better, but it doesn't matter. I'm sorry, it does not matter. You can't convince me that it does when you continue to lose games like this. At 15, TCU, down from 14. Their slide continues after losing to Houston on Friday night at home. And the worst part here is that Sonny Dykes doesn't appear like he's got any answers. The team is a turnover machine. 4-0 on Friday. They lost the turnover battle. It's horrible. And you hear Sonny Dykes in some of these post-game press conferences, and he keeps saying, like, yeah, we practiced well. I don't know what happened. I didn't see this coming. And I'll think back to a conversation I had with Sonny Dykes this offseason. And he said last year in 2023, he knew right after the Colorado game that guys were a little overconfident and that guys were, even if they weren't on the team, they were living in the past when it came to the 2022 championship run. And you just can't do that in football. Certainly that team couldn't do it last year. But now he sounds like a guy who just doesn't have the answer. And that's as concerning as anything else. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, I don't know how this plays out going forward, but I'll tell you right now, Sonny Dykes does not sound like a guy that's in control of this program, or at least has the pulse of this program. And at number 16 in the power rankings, dead last in the Big 12 this week, the Kansas Jayhawks. Another game, another blown lead for Kansas. And for a season that began with such high expectations, some projecting a trip to the Big 12 championship. Instead, what we have is a Kansas team that has blown a lead in the second half of every single game. That is embarrassing. And you can say, well, hey, Kansas football had high expectations and had leads in every game. Now, this was the year to at least be in the hunt in November for a Big 12 championship. I don't believe that was an unreasonable expectation for this team. But I was watching the game Saturday against Arizona State. Did you not think that Arizona State was going to take the ball down the field and do what they did and win that game? We all saw it coming based on how the year has gone for Kansas. So I've got them at number 16 in the power rankings this week. I'm Pete Mundo. Heartland College Sports is how you join us here on the show. Thank you guys for being here and being a part of it. If you have not yet subscribed, please do that. There are thousands of you consuming the show on the podcast on YouTube who have not yet done that. So if you haven't yet, just hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up as well right below the video. That's all we ask of you. Everything we do here is free with Heartland College Sports. We just would love for you to support us. That brings more people to the show, and that's obviously good for business here. So thank you guys for doing that, for being a part of it as we roll through the program. Some of your comments on the power rankings. Michael writes, BYU has beaten K-State and SMU. Better resume than Iowa State. Disagree. Iowa State's got the road win at Kinnick. That is the toughest environment of really anybody thus far, especially in non-conference play. And they've got a like-minded or a common opponent in Baylor, and Iowa State blasted them, whereas BYU nearly blew the lead. So that's how I came to the conclusion that Iowa State gets the nod there. Chief Till, I have a sneaking suspicion Iowa State's going to Big 12 it up and lose to the Mountaineers in Morgantown. ESPN writing today, the Big 12 is the most unpredictable conference to predict. Wow, thank you for that, ESPN. Where have you clowns been for the last 4 months? I'm glad ESPN is on the case that the Big 12 is unpredictable. We've only been talking about that here on this show for how many months now? Telling you this year is going to be nuts for how many months now? And by the way, we are living through it. Tell me you saw Texas Tech and Colorado atop the conference standings. You didn't. I didn't. Okay? We didn't see that coming into the season with Iowa State. Tell me you had Oklahoma State at the bottom of the conference standings with KU before the season. These were two trendy picks to be in Arlington at the end of the year. It has been wildly fun and wildly unpredictable, and that's why we are the place to be, because we've been talking about this stuff for months. While they talk about Ohio State, Alabama, and Texas ad nauseum, and sprinkle in a little Michigan, Oregon, USC, we're talking about the conference that we all love watching, that we are all incredibly passionate about, and that is, yes, as unpredictable as anything that we have seen in recent college football history, and that is this Big 12, this season in 2024. So thank you, ESPN, for joining us and being a part of that and realizing the Big 12 is very unpredictable. Nice job by them, and welcome to the party, folks. Unbelievable. Jason writes, go Cougs. More upsets to come. Willie is keeping them fighting. Before the season, when I gave my season predictions, I thought Houston would finish. I think I had them 3-6 in Big 12 play. That might be a little generous, but what I did say is that they'd have a strong close to the season. And I do think that you're going to see this Willie Fritz team just get much better. If you're on Houston's schedule, you would have rather had them in the last couple of weeks than, let's say, in the month of November. Because I do believe they're a team and a program that will continue to ascend, will get better, will buy in, and you started to see that against TCU on Friday night. If I told you, if you were watching that TCU game on Friday night against Houston, and you had just gotten out of a coma, if I told you that that TCU program had just played for a national championship less than 24 months ago, would you have ever believed me? No. It would have been impossible to believe. That goes to show you how far things have fallen right now for the TCU Horned Frogs. And that's why it is very fair to question what Sonny Dykes' future is at TCU. And I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this right now. You can chime in on the chat. You can say what you want about Sonny Dykes. But I'd be curious to know where this audience is at, where this fan base is at. Not just TCU. Obviously, we've got plenty of TCU fans pouring in here. but just Big 12 fans who have been watching this conference for the last couple of years. Don't forget, and I'm not taking anything away from TCU, but that 2022 team got lucky. And I don't mean just in games itself, but I mean Chandler Morris getting injured week 1 was a stroke of luck for TCU because Max Duggan got beat out for the starting job. And then what happened? After that, what happened is Max Duggan came in and had one of the all-time incredible college football seasons that nobody saw coming. What's a Heisman finalist, or who is a Heisman finalist who has been as unexpected in recent memory as Max Duggan? I know there's always a surprise or two, but a guy who was a backup quarterback, who had been a starter, but most people had written off, lost the starting job. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one. So Chandler Morris going down allowed Max Duggan to come in. And then, of course, they have some of these incredible games where they get the breaks, they get to the championship game, and then they get blown out by Georgia. And now I saw Sonny Dykes 5-7 in his past 12 games. He went 5-7 last year, of course. We know where they're at this year, which also happens to be the same record in the last 12 games as Lincoln Riley. So go make sense of that, right? But it is just unbelievable what is happening at TCU, and just beyond disappointing to see how it has played out under Sonny Dykes the last season and a half. And there's nothing to suggest that things are turning around anytime soon. It just isn't. Meantime, when you look ahead, you look at this game, and this is something we talk about as a staff, like what are the biggest games we're watching? And obviously every game in the Big 12 is big. I don't mean to sound cliche about it, but you look at this weekend and you say, okay, Kansas State, Colorado State, winner of that game is going to be in a much better position to get to a Big 12 championship game. The loser is going to get behind the 8 ball a little bit. But to me, and Deion Sanders, K-State, old Big 12 North game, that's going to be big. You've got old Pac-12 teams meeting up as well, Utah and Arizona State. Loser of that game might be out of the Big 12 race. Arizona's at BYU. BYU tries to stay undefeated, so that's interesting. But Iowa State at West Virginia is as compelling a matchup as you are going to get in the Big 12 this early in the season. Because of what West Virginia did last week, what Iowa State did last week, they both played some of their best football of the season last week, and now they take each other on in Morgantown. And you know that I will have picks and predictions and all that good stuff for you as the season rolls along, so don't you worry about that. I'll be doing all that. I'll be bringing all that to you here on the show. But you know as well as I do that if you are an old school Big 12 fan, this has chaos and crazy written all over it in Morgantown. And it's the 7 o'clock Central Time game on Fox on Saturday night. It is going to be must-watch television, and it is going to be as good as it gets for Big 12 football. And I cannot wait. And I'll get you previews and predictions and everything else as the week rolls along. But as we sit here right now, I am so excited for that one. And I know many of you feel the same way as well. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. Thank you for joining us as always. Subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you guys doing that. And same thing on the podcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great day. Join us in the Heartland College Sports forums, and we'll talk to you soon. Go Big 12.